The room buzzed with anticipation, a palpable energy filling the air as journalists jostled for position and officials whispered in hushed tones. Everyone knew something significant was about to unfold, but few could predict the magnitude of what was coming. President Trump, flanked by a cadre of close advisors, strode confidently to the podium. With cameras flashing and the world watching, he announced sweeping tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, a move that would send shockwaves through international markets and diplomatic circles alike. The signing of the executive order was more than a formality, it was a declaration of intent. He spoke with characteristic passion, invoking national security and the need to protect American industries. Trump painted a picture of unfair trade practices, arguing that foreign competitors had long taken advantage of the United States. His message was clear. America First would no longer be just a slogan, but a guiding principle for action. To his supporters, this was a bold promise kept, a leader finally standing up for American workers and industries. They cheered, seeing it as a long overdue correction. But to critics, including many economists and political pundits, it was a risky gamble that threatened to destabilize relations with a close ally and disrupt established supply chains. Trump, however, was undeterred. He insisted that Canada had exploited the U.S. for far too long, brushing aside concerns from economists who warned of potential job losses and price hikes. Even members of his own party expressed unease, but the president remained steadfast, dismissing their doubts with characteristic bravado. The move was unilateral, a sharp break from decades of cooperation that had defined the U.S.-Canada relationship. For years, the border had symbolized partnership and mutual benefit, but now it became a flashpoint for tension and uncertainty. Trump's confidence was infectious among his base, fueling a sense of national pride. Yet, across the border, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau stood resolute, signaling that Canada would not back down easily. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test the resolve of both leaders. As negotiations loomed, the world watched a dramatic split screen. Trump's defiance on one side, Trudeau's determination on the other. Tensions mounted at the negotiation table, with officials from both countries bracing for a high-stakes showdown. But as events unfolded, it became clear that the script would not play out as Trump had envisioned. The first move had been made, and its effects rippled quickly through American communities. While some steelworkers celebrated, others watched nervously as factories in the Midwest faced new uncertainties. Headlines warned of retaliatory measures and economic fallout. What began as a show of strength soon revealed its unintended costs. Factory doors closed, the stock market wavered, and business owners across the country grew increasingly anxious about the future. The game was on, a complex, high-stakes contest with no guaranteed outcome. As leaders on both sides weighed their next moves, one thing was certain: the consequences of this bold proclamation would be felt for years to come, and the final result was far from certain. Why target Canada? For Trump, America First wasn't just a slogan, it was policy. He saw decades of trade deals as losses for American workers, blaming allies like Canada for hollowed-out industries. Steel and aluminum were chosen as symbols of national strength, justified under national security. This allowed Trump to bypass trade rules, even against a military ally like Canada. The tariffs were also a negotiating tactic, meant to pressure Canada during NAFTA renegotiations. Trump believed economic pain would force quick concessions, giving the U.S. leverage for a new deal. The decision blended economic nationalism with aggressive transactional diplomacy. For Trump, trade deficits were a scoreboard. If America imported more, it was losing. The tariffs were a declaration. The old rules no longer applied. The tariffs were meant to hurt Canada, a bold move by the U.S. government to protect American industries and jobs. Officials promised that these measures would bring prosperity back to American soil, claiming it was a necessary step to level the playing field in international trade. But the pain hit home first, and it hit hard. Almost immediately, American families and workers began to feel the effects in their daily lives, as uncertainty spread through communities that depended on trade. American companies relying on Canadian steel and aluminum faced higher costs overnight. Factories that once thrived on affordable materials now struggled to keep up with rising expenses, putting pressure on their bottom lines. Prices for cars, appliances, and even beer began to climb, contradicting promises of prosperity. Everyday goods became more expensive, straining household budgets and forcing consumers to make tough choices. Small businesses struggled, some freezing hiring or laying off workers. Owners who once hoped for growth now faced the grim reality of shrinking profits and difficult decisions about their staff. Industry groups and business leaders warned of a trade war America couldn't win. They spoke out at press conferences and in the media, urging the government to reconsider before more damage was done. Modern manufacturing depends on cross-border supply chains. Tariffs disrupted this delicate balance. Parts and products that once flowed freely now face delays and extra costs, threatening the efficiency of entire industries. Canada retaliated, targeting American goods from bourbon to boats, drying up export markets. U.S. producers who relied on Canadian buyers suddenly found themselves shut out, with warehouses full of unsold goods. Farmers, distillers, and manufacturers across the U.S. felt the sting. For many, the tariffs meant lost contracts, falling prices, and a growing sense of uncertainty about the future. The tariffs, intended as a weapon, became a self-inflicted wound. Headlines across the country questioned the wisdom of the policy as more Americans realized the unintended consequences. Instead of a quick victory, the U.S. economy was caught in the crossfire. Growth slowed, businesses hesitated to invest, and the uncertainty rippled through every sector. The backlash was swift and growing. Protests erupted, business leaders demanded change, and ordinary Americans voiced their frustration as the nation grappled with the real cost of the trade war. Amid the chaos and uncertainty that gripped the financial world, Mark Carney emerged as a quiet yet formidable force. While headlines screamed and markets trembled, Carney's presence was a steadying influence, almost like a calm in the eye of the storm. He didn't seek the spotlight, but when he spoke, people listened. As the former governor of both the Bank of Canada and later the Bank of England, Carney brought a rare, global perspective to the table. He understood the intricate web of international finance like few others, having navigated crises on both sides of the Atlantic. His experience gave him a unique ability to anticipate the ripple effects of political decisions on the world's economies. Calm and strategic, Carney saw opportunity where others saw only crisis. While many leaders were paralyzed by fear or indecision, he was already mapping out a path forward, analyzing data, and weighing options with a cool head. Carney knew from history that trade wars rarely end well for anyone involved. Instead of escalating tensions, he projected Canada as the rational, stable partner the world could trust. He emphasized Canada's commitment to open markets and fair trade, setting the country apart from the growing unpredictability elsewhere. While politicians battled in the public arena, Carney's steady, measured voice reassured investors and business leaders behind the scenes. He worked tirelessly to maintain confidence in Canada's economy, holding private meetings and public briefings to keep stakeholders informed and calm. He framed Canada as the reliable choice in North America, a beacon of stability in contrast to the volatility coming from the United States. This message resonated with global investors searching for safe havens amid the turmoil. Carney's long game was clear: absorb the initial shock, focus relentlessly on stability, and use Canada's reputation to attract global capital. He understood that trust and predictability were Canada's greatest assets. By positioning Canada as a safe bet, Carney managed to turn Trump's aggressive tariffs into a strategic advantage. He encouraged businesses and investors to see Canada not as a victim, but as a smart alternative for growth and investment. He wasn't just reacting to events, he was thinking several moves ahead, anticipating challenges and preparing responses before they became crises. His approach was methodical, almost like a grandmaster plotting a chess match. In a noisy, unpredictable conflict, Carney was the chess master, quietly shifting the board in Canada's favor. His strategic thinking and calm leadership helped guide the country through one of its most turbulent economic chapters, proving that sometimes the quietest voice can have the greatest impact. Carney's genius was turning crisis into opportunity. As the U.S. turned inward, Canada accelerated trade deals with Europe and Asia. Canadian businesses found new markets, making the economy more resilient and less dependent on the U.S. Canada's proactive approach challenged Trump's isolationism, building new economic bridges. Carney's strategy made Canada the champion of free trade, attracting international investment. By the time USMCA negotiations wrapped, Canada had more leverage, no longer begging for access. The tariffs, meant to weaken Canada, ended up strengthening its global position. Carney's vision helped Canada resist U.S. demands and protect key industries. Trump's weapon became Canada's tool for long-term growth. In Canada, the tariffs sparked rare national unity. Canadians were insulted by the claim they posed a security threat to the US Prime Minister Trudeau took a firm stand, vowing Canada would not be pushed around. Retaliatory tariffs targeted politically sensitive US products: bourbon, orange juice, toilet paper. The strategy hit key American constituencies to pressure Trump. Grassroots boycotts of US goods swept Canada, with hashtags like #BuyCanadian trending. Canadians rallied behind their government, supporting affected industries and seeking new markets. The tariffs, meant to divide, united Canadians in a common cause. Negotiators had a strong mandate and a clear strategy. Canada's resolve sent a message: it would not be bullied. The economic pressure was now a two-way street. In the US, the response was fractured. Trump's supporters cheered the tariffs as a fight for American jobs, willing to endure short-term pain. But mainstream Republicans, Democrats, business leaders, and farmers saw disaster. Retaliatory tariffs slammed agricultural exports, manufacturers warned of job losses. Congress faced pressure from constituents hurt by the trade war. Stories of factories moving overseas and unsold crops piled up. The economic pain created a political headache for Republicans. Public debate grew heated, with both sides pointing to conflicting evidence. The lack of unity weakened America's negotiating position. In contrast to Canada's resolve, America's House was divided. The tariff dispute left a scar on US-Canada relations. Declaring Canada a security threat shattered decades of trust. Canadians began to see the US as unpredictable, not a reliable partner. The special relationship felt less special, forcing Canada to rethink its economic strategy. Diversifying trade became a permanent priority, reducing dependence on the US for America. The episode revealed the limits of power. Even superpowers face consequences. Retaliatory tariffs hurt key US industries and damaged America's reputation as a free trade leader. Though the tariffs were lifted with the new USMCA, the relationship changed. Trust was eroded. Future administrations would need to rebuild it. The saga proved how quickly alliances can be strained in a connected world. The tariff crisis reshaped the US-Canada trade landscape. The biggest lesson: leverage has limits, especially with a resilient, integrated partner. Future negotiations require respect and nuance, not blunt force. Canada's diversification makes it a stronger, more independent player. The US must now compete for Canada's partnership, not just demand it. Canada's targeted retaliation proved politically effective, a playbook for future disputes. Trade policy is local as much as global. Ignoring real-world impacts invites backlash. The America First experiment stressed the relationship, revealing cracks but not breaking it. For lasting prosperity, both nations must remember these lessons and approach each other as true partners.